nothing to it.
Hello everybody and welcome back to Nothing to It. I'm your host, the Tool It Guy, and today we're going to be performing some routine snowblower maintenance. One of our maintenance items that we'll be working on today is tightening the belt. The belt is actually located underneath this cover here, which is attached by two bolts, one here and one there on the other side. Let's come around. A little easier if you come around right there. The reason we're tightening this belt is so we can help optimize the performance of your snowblower in case it's acting sluggish or a little out of whack. You might just need a simple belt tightening. Using my socket set, I've unbolted those two bolts from the snowblower and the cover here. Once you have that achieved, you can actually kind of pull it away from the motor slightly while lifting up. Once it pops up, you should be able to twist it out from underneath this little plastic cap here. Actually not, it's not a cap, it's actually this area here, the snowblower chute. You just kind of bend it out away from the belts and you're free to get in at your belt. Now that we're in here, you can see that this is quite loose and slack. So on this pulley right here, it's hard to tell with all the dirt and grime, we're actually going to clean that off shortly. But there is a slight little gap to the side of the bolt here for this pulley. We're going to undo this bolt from both sides and we're going to pull that out and shift it over just slightly so that this bolt is going through this side of this little flange here. In order to do that, we're actually going to use a pry bar, flex it forward. You'll see that it can bend out of place slightly, and when released, it kind of returns back to its normal position. This will allow us to slip this bolt outwards so we can make that change. There we go. Cracked it loose. Undo that nut. Pushing that forward. Slide this bolt out, freeing our pulley from the system. I've gone ahead and cleaned that up as far as my fingers could reach, that is. But now you'll see when I flex this forward, you can see that extra bolt hole space on the right hand side of the top hole. That is now where we're going to put the bolt in through the pulley, pushing against this belt, hopefully snugging it up a little bit better. Taking this bolt now and the pulley, should be able to kind of push it on slightly and line it up, even into that side of the hole that we were talking about. It's going to be a little bit snugger because there's less space now to work with than we had earlier. There we go. Wiggle that in. Get the nut. Place that back on. And we'll tighten it back into place. Now that it's tightened back on, when you pull on the auger handle, you'll see that that belt tightens into place a little better than it previously did. And in good old reverse fashion, push that belt out of the way a little bit. Try to snug your belt cover back into place. Wiggle it back down. And then reinstall your bolts. Coming around to the front of your snowblower, inside the scoop where all the auger blades are, you might notice that one of your blades spins freely. They shouldn't spin freely. It should actually be tight, just like I showed you right now. The reason it would be spinning freely is because there's little pins that go through the whole shaft here, and they're held on by a cotter pin. If this cotter pin is missing, or this pin is missing, you can allow this bolt to fall out and this auger spin freely, allowing your snowblower not to work properly. It's not just one bolt for the whole system. You'll see on every auger there's a bolt and a pin system of some sort. I'll demonstrate on one now how the pin comes out. Sorry, this is the cotter pin, so you can actually wiggle this out. This is what your cotter pin looks like. There are different styles. This just happens to be one in particular that's on this one. But you might actually be missing this pin. So what you'll want to do is get a pin that replaces the old one. You'll see that hole where the cotter pin came in. That's where you're going to want to line it back up. Slide it back in. Get a better grip on it here. Push it all the way in, locking your auger back into place. While we're on the topic of missing pins, you'll see that this long metal bar here, the lever that helps turn the chute, mine is actually missing a pin right here, one of those cotter pins like we had on the augers earlier, because without it, it kind of pulls out when trying to twist the chute. So if you put it back in, you take a cotter pin like this, same idea as the auger, push it in, now it can't slip out. Next on the agenda is your skid shoe adjustment. This metal plate here is your skid shoe, and it's held on to the scoop of your snowblower by this nut here. On the inside, there's two carriage bolts here and there. What we're going to do is loosen it so we can slide this plate up and down along the blower. I've tipped my snowblower up so that you could see a couple of the parts a little easier. The reason we adjust the skid shoe is that this essentially keeps the scraper blade above the surface of whatever you're snow blowing to prevent this from getting damaged. So if it's slightly raised, it won't get damaged. Like this corner here, for instance, you can see. I'm going to have to take some pliers or something to try and bend that back straight. That was due to an improper adjustment on these shoes, and it caused damage. So we're going to fix that so that it's slightly above the ground when you're snow blowing. Some of these shoes are actually designed in a way that they're reversible. So there might be another L bracket shaped piece here that also has a slot in the bottom that you could actually twist around if this is worn off. Not the case for mine, but we're still going to adjust this so that it's just above the ground. This is actually way too much. The adjustment determines what type of driveway you have. If you're just doing it on pavement or concrete all the time, you only need about 1/8 of an inch gap between the shaver plate and the skid shoe. If you're doing driveways like gravel, you're probably going to want a little bit more, like a 1/4 inch, maybe upwards of a 1/2 inch if necessary, in order to keep this blade from scraping and digging into your gravel driveway or asphalt. You don't want to be damaging your driveway and your snowblower at the same time. So just a little something extra to keep in mind. To begin, I'm going to start by taking a little thin piece of plywood like this. Place it just in front of your scraper blade. And if you just tilt your snowblower back a tiny touch, you can slide that underneath, and that will give you the gap that you need to adjust the skid shoe with. What we'll do is we're going to unbolt these now, slide it down to the concrete, and then tighten it back on, creating that gap that's necessary for our clearance for the snowblower. Taking our socket, I'm going to loosen the nut. The other one. Once you have your skid shoe able to slide around, and then place it down to the concrete, nice and flush. Once it's in place, hand tighten it in place if you can. If not, back to your socket, retighten the blade, retighten the shoe back onto your snowblower scoop. When finished, just repeat for the second side. Another problem you might run into is the wall of your scoop. Sometimes with some heavy usage, you might have a scoop that's bent like inwards or outwards. This one here in particular is actually fairly straight, but in the event that you do have one that's bent, you can simply put on a clamp and help twist and bend it back into place, basically as straight as you possibly can. I'll show you how you attach the clamp for that process next. Alright, so as I was saying, you can take a clamp and simply tighten it on there, and then basically using the leverage of the handle, you can actually bend and twist it back into shape if you need. You might need a second clamp or a pair of channel locks to grip onto as well above it, so you can get a tighter grip and bend the metal back to where you want. Another important thing to keep track of when maintaining your snowblower is the oil. This little yellow cap here on the snowblower is your oil cap, and inside here is your oil reservoir where all the oil is held. On top of this yellow cap, you simply twist it off. I'll show you a second. I'll wipe it down so we can handle it for a minute. So on top, it says oil. It's got the little oil logo so that you know that's the oil cap. When you pull the cap out, it reveals this, what's called the dipstick. And on the dipstick, there are two little letters. Let's see if I can focus that for the camera here. Might be a little difficult to see. Let's see. Yeah, there we go. There's an H and an L. And in the middle, there's these little hatched line marks. The H represents high. That's the highest you want your oil level to be. And the L is the lowest you want your oil level to be. So if your oil is below this hatched line, then you need to top it up with some oil. If it's above the H, then it's too much and you probably have to drain some off. So ideally you want to be in this little hatched line area for your oil level. To put it back in, You simply put the dipstick all the way down, twist the cap to check your oil level, twist it back open, pull it out, and you can check where your oil is showing on your stick. And it really just does not want to focus here. There we go. You can see that my oil is a little low. I'm going to need to top that up. In order to drain your oil, you have to come around to the back of your snowblower. There's a little cap on a pipe here. What you're going to want to do is get a funnel or a bucket of some sort underneath here to catch the oil, because when you twist this cap off, the oil is going to come out, and when it empties, you put this cap back on and then refill your oil reservoir up here. The right type of oil, right amount of oil, in order to get your snowblower back to the proper functioning level that you'd like. All right, so taking an aerial view here, you see I have my bucket. I unfortunately have way too big of a funnel to get in to here to do some sort of setup like this. So I'm just going to, for demonstration purposes, so that you guys can see, I'm just going to actually hold the bucket in place when I undo this little cap and let it drain. But typically you would want either some sort of form of funnel that you can put in there, or some sort of trough that can guide the oil into your bucket. I don't have that right now, so we're just going to kind of wing it here so I can show you. Once you crack that bolt loose, and unscrew it. And the oil will pour out. Key thing to remember once you've drained your oil is to place this plug back in, because when you decide to top up your oil with fresh oil, you don't want that to be spilling it out as fast as you're placing it back in. When you're ready to replace your oil, simply put a funnel in where we pulled the cap off and the dipstick was in. Get yourself the proper oil that you need. You would just simply pour the oil into the funnel in small increments until you get it to the desired levels you need. Next thing we're going to do is take an old cloth, basically dust it all out, get rid of all the old cobwebs, caked on dirt where you can. Just wipe it down as best you can, because after we wipe it down, we're actually going to spray a lot of these heavy rusting spots with WD-40 and try to add some extra protection to our snowblower. But like I said, we don't want to be wiping WD-40 all over a dirty snowblower. So we're going to try and clean out grass and debris that's stuck inside the auger area. I tip it down. You can see up top here, it's just dusty. We're just going to try and wipe everything down. Top of the gas tank. Basically everywhere you see dust and dirt, even in here around the wheels, try to get rid of all this grass stuff if you can. Untwist that. Once you're satisfied with the cleaning of the outside of your snowblower, we'll move on to the WD-40. Once you've knocked enough of the dust, dirt, cobwebs off with a dry cloth, you can then get yourself a wet cloth. Do the same thing. Try to clean all the debris off wherever you can. I've already given this a pretty good wipe down everywhere. But you can see it helps make your snowblower look miles better just by giving a little wipe down all over its surfaces, including inside the auger area. You can see my scraper blade now. Doesn't have all that caked on dirt like it did earlier. So a couple spots there, but inside everywhere, all over the augers. Once you let that dry, we can move on to WD-40. And last but not least, I'm going to spray and shine this thing up using some WD-40. We're actually going to spray everywhere there's a little bit of rust. There's like heavy rusting there. You'll see inside the chamber here, there's some rusting down there. Up here along the edge. Not only just rust, but to keep ice and snow from building up on your chute, you can actually spray inside here. You can actually spray on the wheels. Going around to the other side. You can spray some of these bolts, the metal components, and then you can even wipe and shine the top of the housing areas. A few more rust spots here. Literally just spray it all down. Spray the auger blades. You actually spray a little bit here. What I like to do, using a cloth or paper towel, and actually wipe it down, spread it all around, shines it up, and it kind of helps keep all the snow and ice from building up, like I said earlier. That concludes today's video on how to perform routine snowblower maintenance. I hope you enjoyed watching these videos, and if you still like seeing content like this, please like, subscribe, and always remember, there's nothing to it.